Hi, my name's Sable, and I once watched my mother-in-law stir poison into a bowl of soup, my soup, thinking I was too broken to notice. She smiled as she served it. My husband sat beside her, silent. But what they didn't know is I'd already switched the bowls. That night didn't end in screams. It ended in silence, the kind that follows betrayal. You ever look around a room full of family and realize you're the only one being hunted? I used to think I was the problem, but the truth was buried in politeness, control, and a very specific type of evil no one talks about. So tell me, what would you do if the people who said they loved you tried to erase you with a smile? I stepped through the front doors of Blackwood Mansion in Charleston just after 6 o'clock, late November air still warm, Spanish moss dimming the street lamps. I pull my coat tighter, nerves prickling like cold fingers against skin I've long tried to steal. Tonight is Sunday dinner, the most formal gathering the family holds each month. Crystal, silver, polished wood, everything meant to remind everyone that we Blackwoods have tradition. But for me, tradition has become a weight I carry. The dining room stretches out before me, high ceiling, soft golden light from an ornate chandelier, mahogany chairs lined up beside a long oak table. The tablecloth is ivory, the china edged with thin gold lines, and there's a hush of tuned voices behind curtains and laughter wafting in. I ought to feel comforted by beauty. Instead, my stomach knots. I see my chair placement, and the pit opens in my chest. The seat is at the far end, near the doorway to the powder room, not among the family guests, but nearest place others walk past. Everyone else already seated, glancing at me with practiced politeness. My mother-in-law, Vera, sits at the head, her posture regal. Orion, my husband, is beside her, smiling. I force my smile back, close enough to feel the gold of the chandelier reflecting in my eyes. I step forward, let the hush settle further. I say hello to Orion's aunt across the table. Her voice is warm, but I feel like a shadow passing in front of a window, not truly seen. I swallow. The hostess at my side lowers her eyes. I say, "Thank you for dinner." Vera's lip curves in a stiff smile. I place my napkin in my lap, fingers trembling just enough to betray me. The hush stretches. The carved silverware glints. The air smells faintly of lavender polish and roasted meat. A flick of candlelight dances across Vera's brooch. Emerald shine, sharp. I breathe in, breathe out. I remember my life before all this. My little studio loft in Chicago, paintbrushes, winter evenings with drafts of stories and color. I left it all. I left it because Orion promised me space, promised me, "You'll always be seen." Trusting that, I moved. Because in my heart, I'd always believed love could be enough. But tonight, as I look at these gilded walls, I wonder, is love enough when you sit where no one looks? Vera rises gracefully, her dress whispering over polished wood floors. She picks up the silver soup tureen, glides across the room, pauses at my side. Her silver bracelet catches the light. The faint hiss of steam rises. She sets the tureen down. For a moment, she lingers. Her eyes meet mine. There's something behind the soft smile, expectation, control. I inhale the scent of rich broth, underpinned by something sharp, an edge I can't name. She dips the ladle, skips everyone else, and approaches me. She lifts it and says quietly, "Sweetheart, eat this. I made it especially for you." The broth shimmers in the silver bowl, steam curling like promises. I lean in. I rub my hands together under the table, trying to steady the tremor. The spoon hovers. My husband Orion is talking to Aunt Hazel, oblivious. Aunt Hazel laughs at something Vera says across the table. Their voices merge into background noise, laughter floating like careless birds. I smell thyme, garlic, and something faintly bitter. My senses coil. Something in the broth tastes off when I imagine Vera's smile. The taste of memory, of betrayal, sets me on edge. My knuckles tighten around the cloth napkin. I see the steam blot my vision for a second. The silence deepens because no one notices. "Eat up," Vera says softly, so everyone else can hear. "Sweetheart." A word meant to mask ownership. My hand shakes. I lift the spoon. I lean forward. Just before it touches my lips, I stop. My heart pounding loud in chest. Not a soul blinking. Not a breath. The spoon hovers, and I set it down. I leave the broth untouched. The thing is, I didn't eat the soup. I drove away from the mansion in near darkness, the gravel crunching beneath my tires, headlights slicing through the live oaks. Orion's voice on my phone, a soft, shaky thing, was cut off by Vera's laughter. When I finally hung up, I realized I was gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. The thing is, I didn't eat the soup. What happens next, though, is exactly what I feared. I sit in my small guest house apartment, one I rented a month ago but barely visited, clutching my tea while the wind rattles the old window panes. It's Sunday night and the moon is full, casting sharp white light. I didn't want to return, but I couldn't stay away. I needed to see the aftermath. When I arrive, the house smells of cooked onions and Vera's perfume, an aroma that always seemed welcoming. Once, I slip inside the dining room. The others are still gathered at the table, laughter echoing off wooden panels. Orion toasts with his aunt, lifting his glass high as if nothing changed. My cheeks burn. Vera looks directly at me when she raises her glass. Memorable, unapologetic. Aunt Hazel notices, frowns. I nod, forcing a polite smile, but inside, something fractures between the polite veneer and raw truth. Vera's voice cuts through the laughter, loud enough for everyone to hear. Didn't like my soup, dear? I thought it matched your taste. Simple, unassuming. Her tone is clipped, mocking. Aunt Hazel laughs, slightly too loud. Others smile. I nod. Thank you, I say, keeping my voice calm. My heart hammers. That word, taste, unassuming, a euphemism for you don't belong here, I think. Then Vera raises a toast. Her glass glimmers in candlelight. To family, she says, and to recognizing who truly belongs around this table. The words land like cold stones. She smiles at me, but her eyes betray something sharp, joy at humiliation. My face flushes. I force myself to sit up straighter, swallow. I glance at Orion. He's silent, not comforting, not defending. His hand sits on his lap, not on mine. His silence is worse than accusation. I try to steady myself. If art doesn't pay bills, I suppose someone has to, I say, voice soft but steady enough. Vera's smile tightens. The table chuckles again. Orion clears his throat. Let's not make this more than a dinner. His voice is low, but everyone hears. My heart sinks. My voice, the one I gave up my job for, feels remote, tucked beneath thumb and forefinger. I used to speak up. I used to believe love meant arguing when it mattered. But tonight, I'm reminded that love often silences you. I look at Vera, at her perfect posture, the way light bounces off her brooch. Then I turn and catch eye contact from Seraphine. I see concern there. My old friend. The one who sees even when others pretend not to. I breathe. It's been a while, I say, not for Vera's sake, but for mine. Since someone asked me what I want. The words hang heavy. Silence tightens around me. Even the wind outside seems to hold its breath. Vera raises her eyebrows. What do you mean? She says. Her voice is brittle. I want to explain. I want to list all the small betrayals. My name left out of pictures, invitations addressed to Mrs. Blackwood, doors that close softly behind me. But I swallow it back. Because tonight, I test something else. I say, I want space. I want to decide what belongs to me. My heart thuds. Orion shifts in his seat. Aunt Hazel's spoon clinks. I hear murmurs. Vera's eyes narrow for a moment. She looks stunned. Then she masks it. I think we're raising our voices over spoons. Her tone is calm, but I hear menace. Or maybe regret. I can't tell. I stand. Quietly, I gather my gloves and wrap my coat around my shoulders. The guests glance up. I nod to Seraphine. She gives me a small, painful smile. I don't need applause. I need truth. I walk out the front door, leaving behind the warmth, the china, Vera's voice ringing in my head. The cold night air slaps me awake. I slip into my car without looking back. I made a promise to myself right then. This would be the last time I sat at this table in silence. The light in my bedroom lamp is soft, pale gold. It spills across framed photographs on my dresser, wedding day, art shows, group shots with Orion's family. I settle onto the edge of the bed and open my laptop, fingers hesitant for a second before I type in the search bar. Old photos, old videos, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, my name always whispered, not shouted, never placed at center stage. I pull up a video, the annual Blackwood Company anniversary tribute from 2 years ago. I remember designing slides, choosing color palettes, creating transitions, all with late nights, trying to impress Vera, trying to belong. But as the video plays, I see myself cropped in half in one photo. In another, someone else's name appears where mine should have been. The narrator says, "Tonight, we celebrate the work of our great team, Orion and his wonderful family." My heart clenches. My contribution, my time, my sweat, erased by design. My chest twists, a quiet ache. It's not the first time something like this has happened, but seeing it, knowing it was intentional, makes the air in the room feel thinner. I close the laptop. Silence presses around me. I breathe. I think, I will not let this be comfortable anymore. I rise and go to the kitchen. It's late. Outside, the moon is a pale watcher. I carry a plate, leftover from dinner, and move toward the sink. The hallway carpet muffles my steps. As I walk past the pantry, I pause. A sliver of movement in the doorway catches my eye. Vera, across the threshold, whispering to no one. Her back is to me. She stands over the stove, soup pot steaming lightly. Something is fishy. I freeze for a moment, heart pounding. The smell of garlic mixes with richness, and something metallic. I step closer, quietly, the wood floor cool under my socks. She opens a drawer. From inside, she pulls a small dropper bottle. The kind with a tight cap. She holds it close, tilts her head. The kitchen light glints off the glass. She lifts the dropper, squeezes a few drops into a pot with leftover soup. Steam curls, carrying the faint chemical scent. You learn to smell unnatural things after years of watching as she stirs. I hold my breath. The dropper bottle disappears back into the drawer. She turns, moves with casual grace. She does not see me. Not yet. I retreat, closing the kitchen door softly. The plate in my hand feels heavy. I lean against the wall, pressing my forehead to cool plaster. My mind races, poisoning, betrayal, all the whispered family secrets. All the times meals felt wrong, words felt sharp, gestures felt hollow. Back in my bedroom, I sit at my desk. I open a blank document and type, Plan B, exit with proof. I list every video I have, every message, every moment where I felt invisible. I plan quietly, appointment with an attorney, photo evidence, medical records. Not to lash out, but to protect myself. To be smart. To ensure if I walk away, I leave with truth. I look in the mirror. My reflection is pale, under eye circles, lips set, not broken though, determined. The memory of Vera's smile tonight, gracious, rehearsed, burns in my mind. But I want something more than revenge. I want vindication, speaking only when I have proof. I want to become someone she fears, not because I destroy her, but because I won't disappear. Something shifts inside me, quiet but unstoppable. The sorrow is there, but it sharpens into resolve. I imagine the moment I will show people what she's done. I imagine not being dismissed. I flatter my fear by naming it. I will be heard. If I wanted justice, I needed to become the version of me she feared most, the one who thought for herself. Sunlight sneaks through the plantation shutters in my bedroom, refusing to warm the room. It's early morning, fragile and still. I haven't slept, not really. My thoughts spin, looping over last night's humiliation, every look, every word, every omission. I sit on the edge of my bed, feet on the plush carpet, hearing the distant hum of traffic from Charleston streets, life going on without noticing me. If I wanted justice, I needed to become the version of me she feared most, the one who thought for herself. I rise and cross the room to the tall mirror. My reflection shows tired eyes. I tighten the straps of my blouse, straighten the collar. I breathe in deeply, as though I can pull solidarity from the air. Then I hear footsteps outside the door. Orion's voice, hesitant, strained, creeps in. "Mom told me you acted strange last night." The tone is more concerned than accusatory, but I know what it means. Defensiveness. I stay silent, turning to face him. I hear Vera's distant voice through the hall. I glance at the door, want to retreat, but remain where I am. "What do you mean by strange?" I ask, voice lower than I thought I could manage. "You didn't eat the soup," he says. "You upset everyone." "Mom says you humiliated her." His words land hard, a sharp pain, hotter than embarrassment. I swallow. "So now, because I didn't eat soup, I must explain myself?" I try to keep tone even. He's my husband. If there's anyone who should know better, it's him. He shifts, uncomfortable. "I just don't want drama." Drama. The word tastes sour because avoiding confrontation has been my whole life. But silence has become its own kind of drama. Orion inhales deeply. "If you don't apologize to her," he says, voice catching, "I'll file for divorce." The charge is cold, deliberate. He's siding with his mother. He's giving her power to decide what I may dangle in the air. I feel betrayal knot in my chest. Shame trembles beneath indignation. Years of putting myself second, walking on eggshells to avoid moments like this, I see now how deeply I've muffled myself. "I am not apologizing for wanting respect," I answer quietly, though every word feels like stepping onto ice. "If respect is asking to be invisible, then I choose to be seen." He opens his mouth, closes it. Vera's voice comes down the hallway, polished, controlled. She smooths her dress, readying for her role. I don't retreat to tears. I don't beg for understanding. I pack a bag, 3 shirts, my sketch pad, phone charger, a few books. I've been preparing for this since the video, since the soup, since every forgotten slide, because readiness costs nothing until you build it. I walk into the backyard. The early morning breeze carries salt from the nearby water, smells of gardenias. I call Seraphine first, voice firm. She listens. It's enough that someone who knows sees. Then I call Elowyn Hayes. "I need your advice. I want to protect myself, legally." Twist in motion. I've quietly requested consultation with a divorce attorney. Not out of spite, but necessity. I've documented everything. The videos, the silent cuts, the times I was called overly sensitive or made to feel less. I step back inside. Vera watches from the window upstairs. I see her face, soft in dawn's light, her features calm, but eyes calculating. She mouths something, probably "please apologize." No one stops me. No one questions me. It's as if my leaving is what she expected. I walk to my car. In the driveway, I pause and breathe. The house stands behind me. Tall columns, shuttered windows, walls that have echoed her laughter and her discontent. This house raised its voice too many times. Now it was my turn to be the silence that struck hardest. Chapter 5. Smoke and Mirrors. The thing is, this house raised its voice too many times. Now it was my turn to be the silence that struck hardest. 3 days after I left, I still feel the echo in my ears. Vera's laughter, Orion's silence, the soft clink of cutlery around me. Morning slips into afternoon. I wake up in my small apartment on King Street, sunlight through thin curtains, the hum of Charleston beyond the window. I have coffee and toast. I check my phone, messages from friends, bills, reminders, but for the first time in years, I feel a kind of focus, like I'm waking up to myself. By 11, I'm at Elowyn Hayes' office. Her law books crowd the shelves, but her eyes are clear. She asks how I slept. I say, "Not much. But I slept, knowing I'm not alone. She nods. I hand over what I have, my notes, photos, the video from the kitchen. I watch as she listens, takes in everything. The way she leans forward, I know it's serious. News breaks mid-afternoon. Vera was admitted to the hospital after what her doctor calls accidental ingestion of an unknown substance. The local paper hedges. Could be mistake, could be sabotage. I read the headlines in disbelief, heart like a drum. Part of me wants to scream, "You liar!" But I wait. I know lies are most dangerous when they sound calm. Later, I see Vera's interview. Hospital bed, soft lighting, Vera tucked into white sheets, wearing her pearls. She claims stress, uncertainty, weariness. She refers to me as rebellious daughter-in-law, as though that explains everything. She says people misunderstand. Orion stands behind her, looking uncomfortable but supportive. The camera lingers on his eyes. They look torn. Public sympathy begins to shift. I see posts online. Poor Vera. She seems so frail. Don't rock the boat. My stomach drops. She's using my pain. She's weaponizing the idea that a woman speaking up is ungrateful, unstable. Her voice soft on screen, but her words sharp. I fear for my son's safety, she says, whispering what she hopes people will believe, that I'm the unpredictable one. But there's still hope. While Vera poses for cameras, I sit in my living room with Seraphine. She's wide awake, fierce. She hands me a thick envelope with a USB inside. Bryn sent this, she says quietly. I plug it into my laptop with trembling fingers. The small screen flickers. First clip, Vera testing the dropper bottle in her kitchen, alone. She mutters something, word unclear. She fills a spoon. She moves slow, methodical. The light catches her reflection in the window. She looks away. The clip ends. Another video. Vera speaking into a small recorder. If she's careful, no one will believe it. If she stays quiet, I win. Her tone is low, determined, not insane. Calculated. I sit back, absorbing every detail. My breath catches. Relief lights the room, because at last I have proof. Not rumors. Not whispers. Something I can show. Something I can use. Elowen calls. You're safe, she says. We'll protect you. She offers to secure all these videos in a cloud with backup, advise on public statement. I tell her, not yet. Let's prepare first. Let the storm gather. If I respond too soon, I give Vera the cover she wants. That evening, the first public posts from Vera praise her strength. Sympathy peaks. I watch people I thought were friends share her interview, call me unstable. Someone's always looking for attention. A neighbor's post reads, so countless times we've heard that line. She's just being dramatic. But I am not drama. I used to think meekness was faith. I used to believe peace meant silence. Now I know peace is standing firmly in truth. I draft my thoughts, partly for myself, partly for what might become a public response. I write, truth cannot be silenced by sympathy. I pause. My heart is wide open, vulnerable, yet strong. The next time Vera smiles for the camera, it'll be the last time she lies in peace. I pulled open the courthouse doors just after 9, the hinges groaning as if announcing my entrance. The air was sharp with the bite of fall, sunlight still soft enough to bathe the steps in gold. My heart was steady, not racing, not stuttering, steady. Something new ticked inside me, a rhythm I had never carried before, purpose. Beside me, Elowen Hayes walked with her usual quiet confidence. Her heels clicked against the marble floor in even measure, as if the building itself adjusted its echo to follow her lead. I clutched my folder tight to my chest, the weight of it grounding me. Inside, USB drives, printed transcripts, affidavits, photographs, pieces of truth I had stitched together like armor. Just 1 week after Vera's hospital interview, the tearful performance, the hospital gown staged like a costume, I was here to act. We crossed the marble expanse of the courthouse lobby and approached the clerk's office. The air smelled faintly of polish and paper. A receptionist glanced up over the rim of her glasses, her expression practiced neutrality. Elowen slid the first document forward across the counter with calm precision. "This is an affidavit signed by my client," she said smoothly. "We are filing a civil suit against Vera Blackwood for attempted poisoning." The words landed heavy. I saw the receptionist's brows twitch upward before she reached for the stamp. I had labored over every sentence of that affidavit, trimming excess, tightening truth, shaping it so not a single word could be dismissed. Attempted murder via poisoning. Severe, yes, but exact. It matched what I had uncovered. The dropper bottle, the video footage, the whispers preserved in recordings. Evidence I carried not like a shield anymore, but like a blade. The clerk stamped the paperwork. The sound cracked across the counter, echoing down the hallway like a gavel. Elowen leaned closer, voice steady but soft. "They'll schedule a hearing. You're doing exactly what's right." I nodded. The word right felt heavy in my mouth, like metal, but it stayed. When we stepped back outside, the morning brightness nearly blinded me. I blinked against it and saw the news trucks first, lined like vultures at the edge of the courthouse lawn. Vera's face glowed across a pane of glass, captured mid-frame on a live feed. There she was, wrapped in crisp hospital sheets, pale makeup designed to look like fragility, one hand lifted delicately to her neck. Her lips trembled faintly, and then her eyes shifted. She turned her head toward the camera, then beyond, and found me. She smiled. Not a broad smile. A small, fragile one, crafted to inspire pity. A smile that whispered, "You poor, broken girl. See how the world will never believe you." But for the first time, my skin didn't crawl. I didn't avert my gaze. I let her smile hang unanswered in the autumn air. That evening, the video leaked. Not by me. I had sworn to hold it until court. Someone else, someone who knew, decided the time had come. My phone buzzed with alerts. Headlines screamed across screens. "Breaking, Blackwood matriarch in poisoning scandal." Did she survive her own secrets? What was Vera hiding all along? The reaction was immediate. The video burned through social media, picked up by news anchors, dissected by podcasters. Within hours, my name was everywhere, not buried under hashtags mocking me this time, but held up as a banner. Messages poured in. Women who had been silenced, men who had watched loved ones dismissed as dramatic. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. "We see you. We believe you. You're brave." Others, of course, accused me still, called me the destroyer of family, the attention seeker. But beneath the noise, beneath the clamor, one current surged stronger: vindication. My phone buzzed again. Orion's name lit the screen. I froze, breath lodged in my chest. My thumb hovered before I pressed accept. "Can we talk?" His voice was quiet, almost unrecognizable in its lack of authority. "I saw it," he said after a pause. Shame threaded his words, regret weighing down his tone. "Everything." He inhaled sharply, like a man gasping underwater. "I'm sorry." 2 words. I had rehearsed this moment too many times to count. I had dreamed of it, feared it, needed it. And now, hearing them, I realized they were not enough. The next morning, I returned to the Blackwood mansion, not alone, but with legal escort. Reporters crowded the drive, cameras flashing in hungry rhythm. Vera stood on the porch steps, her hospital pallor traded for a rigid composure. She clutched a shawl around her shoulders, her expression wide-eyed, perfectly timed for the photographers, and Orion. He stood to her right, shoulders stiff, chin lowered. He looked smaller somehow, not the man I once called husband, but a figure hollowed out by choices. I walked straight toward him. I didn't slow. I didn't falter. The cameras surged forward as I reached him. My left hand curled into a fist, my right opened. I pressed my wedding ring into his palm. "Here's your ring back," I said, my voice firm, carrying past the reporters. "You stood by a woman who tried to end me." No shouting, no tears. Just truth, hard as concrete, laid between us like a wall. His hand trembled. He didn't speak. Vera's lips parted as if to interject, but no sound came. The shutters clicked, the microphones strained, the world recording every breath of the moment. And I turned away. I didn't wait for reaction. I didn't beg for understanding. I walked back down the steps, shoulders square, the autumn wind catching my hair like a banner. That evening, in the quiet of my studio apartment, I began packing. My brushes, still caked faintly with paint. My sketchbooks, their margins filled with notes and half-dreams, art books I had once clung to when words failed me. I wrapped them carefully, one by one, and slid them into boxes. Among the unopened emails, I found one from a local women's shelter. They asked if I would share my story, if I would donate pieces from my collection, if I would come speak to women who still lived in the silence I had escaped. I typed my reply without hesitation. Yes. Night pressed against the window. I stood with my journal on the sill, looking at the distant city lights. They shimmered faintly, blurred by the glass, by my breath fogging the pane. I had no illusions. This road would be long. It would twist and break and meet resistance at every turn. But tonight, I knew something clear. I had struck first. Her empire had been built on fear, on silenced voices and controlled narratives. Mine would be built on truth. I stepped into my apartment just past dusk, keys jangling faintly in my hand, the metal clinking like a nervous tick I couldn't quiet. My heart was still hammering, not from the drive home, but from what I'd just seen on television. The small speaker on the shelf crackled with the evening news. The scent of Thai takeout still lingered, basil, lemongrass, chili oil clinging to the air. But it was Vera's voice that filled the room, not the food. Her voice was soft, deliberate, each syllable coated with polish. "My daughter-in-law struggles," she said, eyes glistening with the carefully timed tear. "She has always suffered from anxiety. But no one gave her a chance." The words slithered across the screen, rehearsed, prepared. I sank onto the couch, the remote heavy in my hand, my body rigid, my chest ached with panic and violation. Beneath it all, anger burned, coals glowing steady, waiting for air to turn them into flame. Her legal team had built the stage well. The tell-all interview aired on WCHS 12, a local station eager for drama. Vera sat in a pristine hospital gown, framed by white sheets and soft lighting, her frailty painted as innocence. She rewound the story with skill, recasting me as the unstable one, emotional, unpredictable, incapable of reason. Her attorney leaned forward at one point, hands folded like a priest at a confessional. "The footage is selective, manipulated, taken out of context," he intoned. "There is no real proof. Lies disguised as logic, poison slipped into cups of doubt, and it worked. My name lit up online, trending in hashtags that made bile rise in my throat. Sable, the drama queen. Attention seeker. Poor Vera." Comment threads rippled across platforms, some defending me, some mocking, some dismissing me entirely. "She's just bitter. She's lying for attention. She's unstable, just like Vera said." It didn't sting because strangers mocked me. I'd been mocked before. It stung because people I once trusted, people who had sat at my table, would now watch a lie spread faster than the truth I bled to show them. My stomach clenched. My breath caught tight in my throat. My hand twitched toward the remote, tempted to shut it all off. But I didn't. I didn't throw it, didn't scream, didn't collapse. I released one long, controlled exhale, as though the air itself were armor. The phone buzzed. Elowen. Her voice came through steady, solid as steel wrapped in velvet. "This is what guilty people do when they're losing," she said. "They flail. They smear. They rewrite the script. You don't have to answer with fire. You defend with calm, with evidence, with consistency. That's how you win." Her words steadied me more than I wanted to admit. I closed my laptop. I stood at the window, looking out over the city lights blinking against the horizon. I remembered something I had once written in a journal, years ago, when I still believed I'd never need it. I want to be someone who stands firm. I hadn't known then how literal that desire would become. Standing firm wasn't poetic anymore. It was survival. I turned the speaker off. Silence filled the apartment, heavy but clean. I lit a candle on the counter, the flame small but defiant. Then I prepared. I set up the microphone on my desk, adjusted the levels, hit record. My voice carried steady, low but sure, not loud, not theatrical, just honest. The quiet ones who fought back, I said into the mic. That's what I'm calling this, because I am more than what they say. I am more than their rumors, their staged interviews, their narratives. I told my story, not the one Vera spun, but the real one. I spoke of betrayals woven into family dinners, of being erased with laughter behind closed doors, of fear that grew when silence became my only shield. And I spoke of others like me, women, men, survivors who had been silenced in their own homes, told they were hysterical, unstable, dramatic, until they doubted their own breath. I spoke for them. The podcast uploaded that night. While Vera's interview replayed on television, my voice threaded its way into headphones, cars, kitchens, not as spectacle, as truth. But the counterattacks came quickly. Clips from Vera's interview resurfaced online. A neighbor appeared on screen, muttering, "She always seemed shaky." A distant cousin posted on Facebook. "Didn't she always claim anxiety?" Then worse, an anonymous account leaked an old medical record, years out of date, taken out of context. Proof twisted into accusation. For a moment, I froze, rage and shame colliding in my chest. It was another violation, another stripping away of something meant to be mine. But then I remembered Elowen's voice. They want you off balance. They want you unprepared. So I didn't take the bait. I didn't fight trolls. I didn't answer lies with shouting. Instead, I let Elowen handle the legal front, and I doubled down on truth. I released another episode. This time, I shared small, verifiable facts. Audio clips of Bryn and me cooking together. The recording of us setting up a tribute video. The logs from the cameras I had once checked obsessively at family events. Nothing dramatic. Just detail next to detail. Truth beside truth. Transparency, I said in the recording. Consistency. That's how we fight. Not with volume, but with clarity. People listened. Some scoffed. But some believed. There is strength in letting truth speak for itself. That night, I lit another candle, the wax pooling slowly as I sipped chamomile tea. My mother's face flickered in memory, her silence at the breakfast table, her quiet compliance in storms she didn't deserve. Silence had cost her peace. I would not let it cost me mine. I wrote in my journal, "No victory yet, but this is not surrender." And then something shifted. Small, almost invisible at first. A few supporters began to share my words. Transcripts spread, clips circulated, not doctored but whole. A cousin of Vera's reached out privately, admitting they never believed me before. But the video had changed everything. They saw it. They finally saw it. It was only a crack in the wall they had built around me, but cracks, once made, always widen. Vera had turned the lights on herself, thinking the spotlight would blind me. Instead, everyone saw the fractures. I drove into Austin late in the afternoon, the kind of afternoon where sunlight feels softer, less punishing, as if the sky itself has grown weary of being harsh. The light stretched long shadows across the road, following me as if they wanted one last chance to cling before fading into dusk. The air smelled of wildflowers mixed with the heat of pavement, an odd blend of sweetness and grit that only Texas can make believable. I parked near the studio I'd rented weeks earlier. It wasn't grand, just a modest brick building tucked between a coffee shop and a thrift store. Bare walls, open space, concrete floors that still carried the faint tang of turpentine and plaster. Waiting for color, waiting for stories. I opened the passenger door, let the day's noise drift away, and told myself, this is where my silence ends. The house I had once lived in had raised its voice too many times, slamming doors, whispered threats, mocking laughter that cut sharper than shouting ever could. Tonight, I was the one who would be the silence that struck hardest. Silence not as submission, but as presence, as defiance, as truth. Inside, I began arranging chairs, their metal legs scraping against the concrete in sharp protest before settling. I adjusted the lights until they flickered warmly across the canvases. The show had a name now. Truth in Shadows. Paintings I had begun in moments of despair months ago now hung in proud alignment on raw brick walls. Images of broken soup bowls, mouths sealed shut, shadows stretching, grasping, searching. Every piece a fragment of the life I had endured and the voice I had reclaimed. My breath caught in my chest when I looked at them all together. I had never thought I'd stand in a room where my pain became art and strangers might see themselves in it. I lingered over one piece, the soup bowl. A white ceramic bowl, its spoon half lifted, painted with meticulous care. Behind it, barely visible unless you looked closely, a dropper rested in shadow. Underneath the painting, I placed a plaque. Beside it, a QR code. Scan it, and viewers would find not just my voice on a podcast, but the proof I had collected. The video evidence, the reports, the paper trail they all wished I had burned. Earlier that morning, I whispered to Bryn, one of the few who had stood by me. "Are they ready?" She only nodded. Her smile was small but genuine, and for the first time in years, I trusted that answer. The gallery opened at 6. Light drained from the sky as people trickled in, some alone, some clutching hands, some steady, others trembling. Women, men, even children who pointed with wide eyes at the shapes and colors. Parents explained in soft tones, their voices hushed with respect. The air smelled of jasmine from a diffuser mixed with turpentine from the canvases, art and vulnerability blending into one. I didn't speak at first. I let them wander, let them confront the images in their own time. I watched them from the corner, a woman who wiped away a tear with the back of her hand, a man who nodded slowly, as if some old wound had finally been acknowledged. A girl barely 12, who reached out as if to touch the shadows painted across one wall. When I finally stepped up to the podium, a small wooden stand, nothing ornate, the room grew quiet. My pulse was steady, my palms cool. "I used to believe being quiet was noble," I began, my voice low but clear. "I thought silence was strength. I thought endurance was dignity. But I've come to learn something different. Silence may survive, but it doesn't heal. It can keep you breathing, but it can also bury you." I told them about the soup bowls, about the betrayals hidden behind expensive wine glasses and polite toasts, about cameras that mysteriously stopped recording, about laughter in the background of voicemails that pretended to be apologies. I told them about being erased, not with violence, but with careful omission. I told them the truth, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted anyone who had ever felt invisible to know. You don't have to stay buried. And then it happened. Someone near the front bent over the soup bowl painting, scanned the QR code. A hush swept across the gallery as the sound of my own recorded voice spilled softly from their phone. Others followed. Screens lit up. Fingers tapped. Proof, the evidence I had carried like stone in my chest, spread outward from that single canvas into dozens of hands. Faces changed. Some shocked. Some betrayed. Some relieved, grateful, vindicated. The truth had slipped free from the canvas and into the world. Within the hour, the soup bowl sold. The buyer insisted the proceeds go directly to a women's domestic abuse foundation here in Texas. A red ribbon was pinned to the gallery wall in its place. Others followed, guests pressing ribbons into the wall, marking survival, marking solidarity. At the back of the room, I heard Vera's name. Murmurs passed from mouth to mouth. "Did you see what she created? How could Vera have—" Conversations hushed when I walked by, but their meaning was already loose in the air. The next morning, Vera was not behind bars. Justice isn't always neat. But her world had cracked. Donors withdrew support from her charities. Organizations quietly removed her name from their lists, their panels, their invitations. The once constant phone calls and features stopped. She gave one last interview, her body frail in a hospital bed, her voice trembling. She called me ungrateful. She said I had destroyed the sacred bond of family unity, but for the first time, no one echoed her words. People had seen the video. They had scanned the code. They had watched the shadows unfold into light. Orion, I later learned, packed up his belongings and slipped out of the city. No farewell, no confrontation, just absence. The kind he had always threatened me with, as if it were punishment. I didn't seek him. My ring was gone. My voice remained. That evening I sat alone in the studio. The canvases hung quietly, like sentinels watching over me. I opened my journal and wrote, "Freedom doesn't erase the ache. But I'd rather ache in truth than smile in fear. My hands trembled slightly as I wrote, the old grief still lingering in my bones, but my chest felt wider, my breath freer. The studio was no longer just a workplace. It had become a sanctuary. Survivors came in during the day, sometimes to view art, sometimes to talk, sometimes only to sit quietly in the presence of someone who understood. They left pieces of their silence behind and carried out something lighter. That night, I opened the window to let the Austin air drift in. The breeze carried cicada song, faint car horns, the distant hum of music from a bar down the street. The city pulsed with life, and for the first time in years, I felt aligned with it. I stood in the darkness, no spotlight, no audience, alone, yes, but not erased. I wasn't reborn. I didn't need to be. I simply remembered who I was before they buried her. I drove east through the Texas sunrise, the sky painted in shades of pale pink and lavender that seemed to bleed into one another like watercolors left too long in the rain. The air was cool for now, though the day promised heat. I rolled the windows down, let the wind tangle my hair, and breathed in that unmistakable Austin air. Jasmine from wild shrubs, dust from the road, and a faint metallic tang of the city waking up. It had been 6 months since I had chosen not to walk past art pieces hidden in corners, past shadows that silenced me, past rooms where my voice never belonged. 6 months since I stepped away from the stage they built and built my own instead. And here I was, standing in the studio I now called mine, greeting strangers who no longer felt like strangers. Survivors, each of us threads in a quilt, stitched together by pain, but held together by the resilience to keep from unraveling. The art walk began gently, no grand announcements, no flashing cameras. Just quiet steps on the polished concrete floor and soft voices that carried reverence rather than gossip. Parents walked in holding the hands of small children who pointed at the canvases with wide eyes. Women moved slowly through the gallery, their faces etched with stories I didn't need told aloud to understand. The walls spoke for them. On one side, a painting of a bowl cracked and repaired with gold, light glinting in its seams. On another, a face with lips sealed in threads of red paint, unbroken but silenced. Further down, long, stretching shadows reaching toward a faint figure at the canvas's edge. Each piece was a testimony, a confession, a survival. Music floated through the room, a cello's deep hum, a violin's tender ache, a voice singing slow and low. The gallery lights were dimmed except where they pooled warm around the art, each canvas bathed as if it were sacred. I had asked for no spotlights, no spectacle. I didn't want anyone to feel watched. I wanted them to feel seen. My voice came through the small speaker system, the one I almost hadn't set up. This walk is for those whose voices were held back, those nights when silence seemed safer. We carry our stories in brushstrokes, in color, in quiet light. The murmurs died down. Guests stilled. A woman at the back clasped her friend's hand, squeezing hard. A man wiped his eyes, turning away slightly. Children hushed without being told. I felt the air shift, as if everyone recognized we were stepping not just into a gallery, but into a truth too long withheld. When the exhibit closed for the afternoon, I drove to the cemetery on the edge of town. Oak trees towered above, their branches groaning in the breeze, their leaves carpeting the ground in brittle brown. My mother's grave sat beneath one of them, a modest stone marked with her name. I carried lilies, white, their petals open, hopeful. I knelt and laid them at the base of the stone, my knees pressing into the dry earth. "Thank you," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "Thank you for showing me that silence has its cost, and healing has a price I'm willing to pay." I apologized too, not for leaving, but for staying in the shadows as long as I did, for letting others write my story before I found the courage to take up the pen myself. No tears came, only resolve, steady and sure. In my coat pocket rested a letter from Vera. Its edges were worn from being folded, unfolded, folded again. I didn't read it. I didn't need to. Apologies written in ink were no longer currency I spent my heart on. I stood, brushed the leaves from my skirt, and walked back to the car lighter than when I had arrived. Back at the studio, evening light streamed through the tall windows, turning the walls a honeyed gold. I sat at my desk, logged into my podcast dashboard, and stared at the number. 1 million plays. 1 million times my voice had been heard in headphones, in cars, in kitchens across the country. Comments scrolled across the screen, voices reaching for mine. You saved me from staying mute. Thank you for speaking when I couldn't. I know the bowl. I've lived the bowl. I smiled softly, not prideful, but grateful. Another message blinked in, a survivor asking if they could contribute a painting to the Truth in Shadows series. I typed back quickly. Yes. Always yes. Later, at home, I spread paints across a table and invited a young girl from down the hall to join me. She was curious, bright-eyed, curious about colors. Together we mixed shades, gentle blues, mercurial pinks, whispers of gray. She dipped her brush, then paused, looking at the canvas I was working on. "Why do you always paint a woman standing alone?" she asked. I froze, brush hovering in midair. Her voice was clear, innocent. I put the brush down, turned to her. "Because alone is where she found herself," I said softly. "Not because she wanted to be, but because silence taught her strength." The girl nodded as if she understood more than her years should allow. She dipped her brush into pink and began to paint her own canvas. Night crept in. I closed the studio doors, drew the curtains, and sat by the window with my journal on my lap. The cicadas sang their endless chorus outside, and the fading light slipped across my skin. The memories still tingled there, the betrayals, the humiliation, the glint of Vera's eyes, the careful way Callum said us as if it meant something it no longer did. Some nights I still woke in sweat, heart pounding from dreams of those rooms where I'd been erased. Healing was not perfection, it was not forgetting, it was carrying the ache without letting it dictate the path forward. But I also carried gratitude, deep, abiding gratitude, for everyone who saw me when I was determined not to be invisible, for every piece of evidence I had laid plain, for every whisper of truth that had turned into someone else's courage. I knew justice doesn't always roar, sometimes it doesn't even speak loudly, sometimes it is a whisper, persistent, patient, sustained through time. And so I whispered back, through art, through speech, through kindness offered to those who thought they were alone until they found stories like mine. My silence hadn't killed me. Theirs had tried to. Now, I spoke not to shout, not to rage, but to set others free. Before we end this story, I want to leave you with something that still echoes in my mind. Silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's survival. But there comes a moment when speaking up is no longer a choice. It's a rescue. Have you ever stayed quiet just to keep peace in a house that never offered you any? Let me know in the comments. Your story matters. And if this one moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of courage, justice, and quiet revenge.